All right, so this week, I guess this is week 2 of our official rebranding to the Revisiting podcast. So last week, we revisited All in the Family, and we found out through basic Wikipedia research that there's a British show that All in the Family wasn't a direct remake, but it was very closely inspired by a British show called Till Death Us Do Part. And looking through my stuff, it turns out somebody on YouTube actually recommended this show sometime last year. So whenever someone does that, I keep a little tally. So this was in my to get to eventually list. So that would have been kind of interesting. Like we came in through All in the Family, but had I gotten to it on that list, we would have watched Till Death Do Us Part first and then saw that it was related to All in the Family and gone that way.
There's something about it. I don't know if it's my memory or just because we talked about it, but I'm thinking maybe I know about this from somewhere before.
Yeah,
But
maybe.
I'll have to wait until I see it to see if that's true.
And I think we have, I mean, I don't know this for sure, but I feel like in Canada we do seem like we have a little more of a British crossover. I mean, it just stands to reason, right? That we would probably, I assume we had more British TV on our airwaves than, say, America did, probably, right? So,
Probably originally, but the public broadcasting stations in the United States really picked up on a lot of that British television.
oh yeah, I guess we did get MPBN, right? The
Yeah.
Maine Public Broadcasting, even though we're Canadian, but Maine is near us. So yeah, that's true. So this show, in a weird way, I kind of didn't research it a ton because it is extremely similar from what I looked into to the All in the Family scenario. So I feel like it's probably, if anyone dipped into this episode, it's worth it to go back to last episode and listen to our All in the Family talk because this came out first. This came out in 1965, but the whole social scenario of All in the Family is basically identical here. It's a somewhat bigoted British guy, and his I guess his wife is more combative in this British one, where Edith was pretty much just went along with Archie. But then, he's got the daughter who's more progressive, and then the daughter's fiance who's this no good liberal, and just extremely similar to All in the Family. So it felt a little bit like, for me to just regurgitate all that stuff, it's like we already talked about it last week. We're just getting the British version of it this week. So this show, it aired on BBC One, Till Death Us Do Part, from 1965 to 1975, and then returned in 1981. And then they made a sequel show called In Sickness and in Health from 1985 until 1992. So this thing ran like crazy for for a British show. Of course, though, it was British seasons, so the way they do their series are much smaller. So the overall number of episodes is still less than All in the Family, but yeah, it was yet another case of, I mean, this happens quite often, these things that probably every British person of a certain age, and maybe of any age, probably knows this show and knows all the actors and knows all the characters. Not us, though. But I guess that makes sense because we had All in the Family,
I'll ask my friend Beryl when I see her tonight. She's from Britain. I'll ask her what she knows about this one.
Yeah, the
'Cause
guy.
she knew Billy Bunter.
Right. The Archie character, his name is Alf in this one. So yeah, ask if she knows Alf from Till Death Us Do Part, and I mean, I bet you dollars to donuts that she does.
I bet she does too.
So this show was created by Johnny. I looked up his name. See, it looks like Johnny Spite, but I looked up the pronunciation and I forget. Spate, maybe?
P-E-I-G-H-T, Spite.
The YouTube comments have got me off balance or whatever. Yeah, it's like either we have episodes that don't get a lot of views, and that's fine because just nobody watched them, but then we get those ones that do have a lot of views, and then you get the weird old busybodies coming out of the woodwork. You're not a real fan, you don't know. Well, I'll admit right off the bat, I'm not a real fan, and I don't know. I don't even know how to pronounce this guy's name.
Spate.
So if it's not Johnny Spate, it's not my fault, YouTube. YouTube itself told me that that's how you pronounce it. So anyway, created by Johnny Spate, who wrote for a bunch of radio and television programs, started in radio, moved on to TV, and when he passed away in 1998, they basically retired this Alf character. So that was probably the only reason this show ended. They would have brought it back again. It just seems like it always came back. So it's Alf, his wife Elsie, his daughter Rita, and her socialist layabout husband Mike. So those are, again, the scenario is exactly the same as All in the Family. Oh, and it's a similar thing too of, we were saying with All in the Family how it's like people didn't, not everybody was in on the joke, Some people were, and some people, disliked Archie Bunker purely just on a surface level because he said all these terrible things. So it was somewhat of the other side of the coin in England, where this Johnny Spate dude said, according to interviews he gave, the fact that some viewers overlooked Alf's racist views and regarded him as a rough diamond disappointed Spate. So people liked him too much. They're like, he's a good old guy, that asshole Alf, bigot, jerk. So that's just kind of funny, because even that's like that, the duality of All in the Family, the conservative versus the progressive guy. It's like that on the world stage. Like America was in the throes of let's be progressive, and I don't like those things that he said. And England was still like, I do like those things he said. And this was just somewhat strange. I don't really know how to explain this, but I just thought it was interesting. That in interviews, Spate explained that he had originally based Alf on his father, an East End docker who was staunchly reactionary and held unenlightened attitudes toward black people. Spite made clear that he regretted that his father held such attitudes, which Spite regarded as reprehensible, and Spite saw the show as a way of ridiculing such views and dealing with his complex feelings about his father. So that makes sense, why, of course, it's the father in the show, it's his father in real life, makes sense. But then some dude wrote a book about the history of Till Death Us Do Part, and in his research, he found that Mr. Spite was a hardworking, working-class East End docker who was very polite to everyone he met, no matter their background.
And he's talking about the father.
Right. But I was thinking about that, and I was thinking, I feel like I am more inclined to believe Johnny because, even if the dad is one of these Archie Bunker, Alf-type characters in real life, you're still going to probably be relatively personable and friendly and be a nice person. And if someone comes sniffing around asking about you for a book, the neighborhood's not going to go like, yep, he's a real asshole. They're going to say like, nah, salt of the earth, that guy. So.
And people feel that way about Archie Bunker in the show Archie Bunker.
Right.
Archie's well liked down at the bar, and I'm sure he's well liked at the docks where he works. Or wherever he works. I think it's docks. I don't know where he works, actually. But he's probably very well liked among those people that he works with. They were of a generation that those beliefs were perfectly acceptable.
Yeah, so it's safe to say, in a way, kind of both things. Probably true. So I found the first episode, Series 1, Episode 1. It is called, for anyone who wants to watch along, it's called Arguments. But then I also found this other thing that I thought was kind of interesting while we're watching this. Instead of a second episode of this show, a bunch of the episodes are missing. At least a dozen of them are gone. And it's just one of those things that's so disappointing in the Wikipedia entry where it's like, all these episodes are gone because in the 70s they were just erased and,
purging.
Yeah. And they just say, as was the policy at the time. And I was just thinking how, there's so many things in life where there's the two sides of the story, all the way down to this guy's dad or whatever. Like, you can always see the other side of something. No matter how terrible it is, you can go like, I can see why they thought that or why that happened, or try to see the other side. One of the very few things in life where you can just unequivocally say, that was a boneheaded decision, that was absolutely the wrong thing to do, is to just delete a bunch of your TV shows, BBC, you fucking morons. It just makes me so mad every time I read that, because it's just the dumbest, most short-sighted. Like, they should just round up whoever was responsible for those decisions, and if they're still alive, like, I don't know, just like whip them or something. Not real hard, but just enough. Even if they're 99 years old. Just like, you stupid dick. I don't know. Maybe that makes no sense, but it's just, there's just literally no reason to do that. No upside whatsoever, except, we don't have a lot of room on the shelves for the canisters for these, and we are so narrow-minded that we can't foresee a future where this would ever be a useful thing to have. What assholes. Anyway, the reason I'm bringing that up is the BBC later, this is a good example of making, taking a just purely bad situation and making something neat out of it. They had this little series. They only did like 3 of these, but they took scripts for old lost TV shows and they reenacted them with new actors. So they did, oh man, what was Sanford and Son called in England? It was called Steptoe and Son. And they did a Hancock's Half Hour, and they did Till Death Us Do Part. They just did 1 episode of each of these from like 2016. So I've got that. So we can watch a real one, and then we can watch a 2016 reenacting of a lost episode, because why not? It's just a neat thing that I stumbled upon.
Sure. Let's, and then we can compare the reenactments with the original.
Yeah. The other thing that's weird about this deleting the episodes, it's like, I guess I should just be thankful that they didn't delete all of them, right?
Yeah, yes, because there are some of these things that we've watched in the past, and they are all gone, except maybe one.
Yeah, so, because even just pulling this up here, I'm just like, why am I looking at this? I feel lucky that I have this, if that was their policy. Although apparently, too, like I was reading that they did kind of like a drive for a bunch of these shows to go like reach out to private collectors and stuff and just try to find the lost episodes of these shows. So I think they found like 3 Till Death Us Do Parts that were just in the collections of people. So, you never know. There's always stuff out there. It could, at any time, someone could find it. But yeah, I guess it's just lucky that the people who enacted that policy were clearly so half-assed at their job that they only half deleted things. They didn't. It's a good thing they weren't more diligent, or they would have deleted every goddamn thing. Well, I guess I'd say, yeah, if you happen to be, just say, for instance, you're a YouTube person. You were fucking dicking around on YouTube, and you're like, oh, Till Death Do Us Part. Let's go watch this YouTube video. I love that show. It's my favorite show. You should click off right now. Don't even listen to this. You're not going to like anything that we have to say. So, if you're a huge fan of Till Death Us Do Part, I'm serious, get the fuck out of here, because I hated that show. I fucking hated it. That's the worst thing we have ever watched. And we've done 90 episodes of this? We've watched some lame shit, and just our random stuff, watching the history of television. But man, there's no redeeming quality to that whatsoever, except that it was the inspiration for All in the Family. Brutal, right? Holy fuck.
Oh, it's terrible. At least those 2 episodes we watched were.
Yeah, yikes. All right, so I mean, the first one, I was trying to give it the benefit of the doubt because it's obviously quite old. The sound quality, again, we've heard worse, but it was a little tinny, a little hard. So that made it extra tough for our dumb North American brains to understand, because it has that same thing like Billy Bunter had, where they talk really fast, really quick. But this was not like witty banter. This was just the most boneheaded yelling. It's just them yelling, literally, for, like we were saying, how All in the Family, there's these constant little butting heads between the son-in-law and Archie Bunker. But, 20 seconds, they argue, and then they move on. It's clear they don't agree, but they don't belabor it. 9.5 minutes, they just yelled at each other about...
Something about the parties.
The Labour Party and the Tories, yeah, and that's it.
We could barely make out what they were saying. Now that could be our fault because we couldn't understand the accents. They were really, really thick.
Which again, I mean, I guess there's no way around it because, yeah, if you're gonna...
But I was willing to try to listen and try to not catch every word that they were saying, but the gist of what they were saying, but it went nowhere.
Yeah, and again, if you're going to portray this character, they obviously need to have the legitimate accents and stuff. Obviously it's not a show for us. It's a show for British people of 1965. But yeah, even just getting the surface level of it, like I was saying too while we were watching it, in halfway through episode 1, I'm tired of listening to this guy and his blowhard rhetoric, because it's not... It's like, people like that in real life, but they're just the most boring people in the world. Why would I want to watch a TV show about this?
And then they changed the setting.
To
to the
pub.
bar.
Yeah.
And okay, I thought, well, maybe there'll be something happen here, but no, it just was continual yelling.
And also, because this kind of carried on to the second episode too, childish. Like, not at all clever. It's like, so he gets in an argument with his son-in-law, and the son-in-law goes to the pub. So why then does Alf have to immediately follow him to the same pub? I don't know, but he does. And then he deliberately sits where they're trying to play darts. Well, it's a public house, isn't it? I can sit where I want. It's just like, fuck off.
And he
Fuck
refuses
you.
to move, even though he knows that the bunch of, and they're drunk.
Like, there's nothing
They
likable.
want to play, and no, he won't move. Like,
And not only, I mean, I do think he was the more annoying, but because I said this too about what is Meathead's name again? I always forget in All in the Family.
Mike Stivic.
Mike, okay. Was this guy Mike also?
This
Were
guy
they
is
both
also
Mikes?
Mike.
Okay, so they're both Mike. So the thing too with the Mike character, not as annoying, but still, like I mentioned with All in the Family, it's like, yeah, but he is also annoying in his own way. And the same thing here. It made me think how Norman Lear was saying he saw this show and it reminded him of his relationship with his father, and obviously Johnny Spate, who made this show based on his father. I wonder in both those cases if either of those guys ever took a step back and realized, like, yeah, maybe my dad was a bit of a handful, but I'm also annoying. Like, if this reminds you of your relationship with your dad, you're fucking annoying. My relationship with my dad was not like that, even remotely.
Well, and Mike Stivic in All in the Family, yeah, he's a bit of annoying, but you kind of like him because he is representative. He really is. He's representative of the young men of that time who were very liberal-minded and liked to smoke dope and marched for rights and justice and all that stuff. I never got that impression from the young man in the first show of Till Death Do Us Part. I just found him annoying. Like he's so cute.
Yeah.
And he played that cute act. And no, I didn't find he was nearly as likable or dislikable as Mike Stivic. Mike Stivic was like every man. This guy's just like a young man living at home. Blah, 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 blah. I wasn't impressed. Now,
And well, I was going to say too, in the way All in the Family, its scenario was very clear. Like, here's this archetype, here's this archetype. Now they butt heads. The way they did that in this British version was just it's like banging your head against a wall, where the dad Alf is just constantly, the Tories and the Labour, blah, blah, blah. And then the Mike guy is just, what are you on about? He said that 3 fucking times. Say something else, you dimwit. Like, Jesus. That's not an argument. That's not a debate. That's not a stance. That's not a take. That's not anything.
and then the third scene change, which you mentioned, reminded you so much of Andy Capp.
Yeah.
Exactly. It was exactly like Andy
Except it
Capp.
was latter day Andy Capp when it wasn't funny anymore.
But even Andy Capp, you get a little four, maybe 5 little panels of a joke of coming home drunk. The I don't know how many minutes was, probably 10 minutes of them just being drunk at home.
Yeah.
And there was no rhyme or reason to it or any commentary or anything that came out of that. It was just coming home drunk.
I guess the one thing is that, you've got these 2 men from these different generations that have diametrically opposed politics, but once they've been hanging out at the pub and they're drunk together, they're all the same in the end. They kind of get along, and now it's more the 2 drunken guys versus the women of the house. Just,
Yeah.
turns into a different, equally stupid fucking paradigm. But then,
The remake.
holy crap, yeah, that first episode was a masterpiece compared to this. Now, I'd like to say, so still, for the record, technically, I'm still very opposed to getting rid of old TV shows. That was a crazy thing to do. But man, if there has ever been less lost than that episode, I don't know what it could possibly be. That was one of the worst pieces of television I've ever seen in my life. And in this case, they did, it was more modern tech, the sound was clearer, and they did speak in a much more enunciating, sort of easier to understand way. I understood every word this time, and it wasn't worth it. Like, at least in that first episode, in the haze and the kind of cloud of the accent and the quick talking, you can at least imagine maybe something clever is going on in there that I'm missing, where in the remake one, it was so evident that every word of that was a waste of everyone's time. What a terrible script Just awful.
And if I had to choose between the two Alfs, the Alf from black and white 1965 version and Alf 2016 remake version, I could not stand that man at all in that remake. What a whiny character. They offer him fish and chips. I don't want your fish and chips.
Yeah. Yeah, I was saying how I don't remember which episode of The Simpsons it is. Like, I couldn't find the clip, but there's this episode where Bart's dressed up like a fancy businessman, and he's just angry that his dinner's not ready. Where's my dinner? That's what that was. It was The Simpsons making fun of an old sitcom, but for real. The whole episode was that his wife was out at the pictures, and how dare a lady leave the house and stuff. So his dinner was ruined. And the whole episode was him whining about his dinner.
But even if he wanted to kind of have words with her for going out, because obviously he's the domineering partner there, and she's not supposed to have a life of her own. But he whined and whined and whined about everything. If I'd had a gun, I'd shoot that man.
Yeah,
I certainly wouldn't be married to anything like that. Whereas the guy from 1965, black and white version, yeah, you could see a lot of women being connected up with men like that, but like that new guy, ugh.
Yeah, I wonder. I mean, I don't know. I wonder how the show progressed, because like it seems weird if they're going to remake it. They're obviously trying to stick with the spirit of it. So is that what Alf devolved into? Just being, because again, we were talking earlier today just about nothing in particular, just that you were watching Curb Your Enthusiasm. And yeah, it's that similar idea of the way Larry David focuses on these little details that no one else would even care about, and he makes it into, a giant to-do. This was similar, but you couldn't do it more poorly. Like, with Larry David, it's funny. It's like, it's funny that he's so obsessed with these little things, and he's going crazy over this dumb stuff. Where this guy is going crazy over this dumb stuff, but it legitimately is just like a stupid man getting upset over dumb stuff.
Yeah.
It's not clever. It's not funny.
Yeah, he hasn't any witticisms to make about it or any commentary or anything. He just sits there and whines and whines and whines.
The only time, because again, that's where, now that I could totally follow everything, I had my little personal mental tally of like how long until the first joke happens. Because every once in a while there's a little patter of laughter from the audience, but it's purely, just the give and take of an audience in a sitcom. They're just following the sitcom rhythms. No one's laughing because it's funny, because it's not fucking funny.
No, obviously you can almost see the big laugh lights.
Yes. The only time I would even consider any of the lines in that to count as a joke is he's got this annoying, tiresome run of trying to use the call box to get in touch with people, and he can't get the number and blah, 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 and it just goes on and on and on and on and on. And then when he gets out of the call box, complaining about how hard of a time he's having telephoning someone, he's like, this damn Labor government. Like, again, it's just his same thing he always says, but I thought that was mildly funny because it's so unrelated to what just happened to him. It's a little bit funny that whenever he has frustrations in his life, it's the government's fault. That's the closest thing to a joke in that whole half hour. And that was it. There was not even a runner-up. That was the only thing. And I mean, you can even think that barely counts. I'm reaching here. Yeah. Man, I honestly think that is the worst thing. I know I've said this before, but I can't think of what. Like I guess the thing I brought up as we were watching it is we did watch back in the earlier days of this podcast a show called The Larkins that I remember you liked more than I did. But it was, but what I didn't like about it is that it wasn't entertaining to me. It wasn't fun. It was just a dour British family. But it was a fucking trip to Disneyland compared to this. Because this was just literally an annoying family. And yeah, man, rest in peace, Johnny Spate, but you're not a clever man. These jokes are not clever. They are like, when they said in the episode, like, hey, he's so childish. Like, he literally is. It's like babies that are somehow grown up and dressed in clothes and own a house. It's just... So anyway, apologies to all British people who might be listening to this. Because again, these things, they just get in the cultural DNA. It's just like, it's a classic. It's Spike Milligan. It's whatever. It's just, it was always on TV. It's an institution. sometimes this shit just isn't any good. And I'm sorry to be the one to tell you that the Emperor's not wearing any clothes, but that show is shit.
No. And to even compare it to All in the Family, I find is an insult to All in the Family. We watched 2 back-to-back episodes of All in the Family last week. Both of them were excellent. The interaction between the actors, the pace, the jokes, it was excellent. This, no comparison.
And yeah, I mean, and obviously too, that's not commonly the case. Most of the time, the British version is better. But I guess there's an exception to every rule. This is it, man. This is the one. Oof. So yeah, anyway, again, leave an angry comment. I mean, we've earned it this time. You're right to be mad, because I got nothing nice to say. Not even one thing. Join us next week for our next hatchet job to a beloved classic.
Till death do us part, well, we're giving the death knell to this one.
Yeah, yikes. Oof.
Oh, I couldn't believe how bad that was. I was expecting something.
And it's like the pressure building up too, right? I think that's maybe also why this is an extra agitated review or whatever, right? It's like we're just waiting and waiting and waiting for the episode to be over. And it's like, okay, well, let's watch the remake. That'll be fine. And then waiting and waiting and waiting for that one to finish. It's like the pressure is built up. We just have to blah! Shut up, Alf, you fucking idiot. Shut up.